Welcome back to my channel. I am your favorite Disney princess, Anna, Bougie Vintage, and today's video is another Halloween series. Ooh, spooky. Girl, it's tired. So, I know you probably think I'm going to tell you Frozen, but baby, we're not doing Frozen today. We'll call the story What Happened to Sarah. When Sarah was a little girl, she was extremely introverted, okay? She had friends, but really she preferred to be alone. She would go to school, and though she would enjoy it, the minute that she got home, she would feel so relieved. A lot of the time, people read Sarah as rude because she didn't talk much and she really didn't want to speak if she didn't have to. One day after school, her friend called her literally as soon as she walked into the house, and this set Sarah ablaze. Sarah didn't really understand why somebody that she was just with all day would pick up their phone and call her as if they weren't just with her all day. Baby girl was tired. She needed to decompress, okay? She didn't want to talk to nobody. Sarah really did not mean to cause harm. She didn't mean to be rude, but after a long, hard day at school, she just needed some time to herself, okay? She needed to relax, kick back, have a bowl of cereal maybe. She needed to be alone. Sarah really just needed that time to reset so that her next day or the next day could run as smoothly as possible and she could do it all over again. Now, what Sarah's friends didn't know was that every single night before Sarah went to sleep, she would be extremely terrified. She was scared to go to sleep. She was afraid of the dark and she was afraid to go to sleep, because when she would sleep, she would have this reoccurring dream. This wasn't just any old dream, okay? This dream was so real and so vivid that it often confused Sarah when she would be waking up, when she would wake up. It would often confuse Sarah when she would wake up the next day. We'll just say that. Now, Sarah had many dreams. Some were good and some were bad, but her dreams tended to lean more towards nightmares. One of the dreams in particular involved a man in a cloak. He was tall and bald and had these crazy glowy green eyes. And every time that Sarah would sleep, she would encounter this scary tall man in a cloak. Sometimes the man would take her with her parents' knowledge. They would be okay with it. When Sarah was having these nightmares, the man would come to her house, and if she was awake in the dream, he would pick her up and pretty much be walking past her parents with her, and she would be screaming and hollering for her parents to help her, to take her, not let her go with the man because she don't want to go to the tent, and they would not oblige. They would just let him take her. When Sarah was having these dreams, sometimes she would see it out of body, so she would be watching it happen to herself, and then other times she would be still feeling it as herself, like not watching it in the third person but first person. Now, when Sarah got into the tent, that's when the dream gets confusing, because she wouldn't know or remember what was happening to her in the tent. Sometimes it would be rituals, sometimes she would just be laying there and can't move, but most often she was brought to a tent and then her brain would block out whatever was going on. When Sarah would wake up from these dreams, she would be in a cold sweat. She's freaking out. She's like, what the hell is this? Maybe not those words because she was fairly young, but what the hell is this? She was terrified. She would run to her parents' room at the speed of damn light and get in her parents' bed and pretty much look for comfort. She would cuddle her mom and try to be comfortable. Now, since these dreams were so exhausting and taxing and she was kind of losing sleep, on the odd times that she would be able to wake herself up out of the dream, the next day she would just be drained. She would be exhausted. She couldn't focus. She couldn't function. I don't know if you guys at home dream, but when I dream, especially if it's a bad dream, the next day I often feel like my spirit was at war while I was sleeping. And it sucks. And so that's pretty much how Sarah was feeling. This is also a big part of why she was so introverted, because she was mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted because she's not getting enough sleep. Now, Miss Sarah, she never told her parents about the reoccurring dream, okay? And that was because on the nights that she wouldn't wake up from the dream, the next morning she would be really confused and the lines were blurred because she couldn't tell if it was a dream or if it was reality. This made Sarah not able to trust her parents. She was looking at them sideways, okay? She's like, I ain't got time for y'all to keep giving me to this man in a cloak every damn night. What are you guys doing? You guys are supposed to be my mom and dad. Like, I thought you guys loved me. Sarah's confused girl. She's like, my parents can't be trusted. I'm my parents. Because of this, Sarah became increasingly paranoid. She was shooketh, okay? She didn't know who could be trusted, if her mom could be trusted, if her dad could be trusted. She didn't even know who this glowy-eyed, green-eyed man was. So she was kind of left to her own devices. So Sarah was so paranoid that she convinced her parents to buy her a spy kit from the Scholastics magazine that she got from school. Baby girl was convinced she was going to catch her parents plotting against her, okay? She thought she was going to catch her parents plotting damn against her. She's like, I'm going to get you guys because somebody is setting me up. Somebody is sending me out with the man in the cloak, and I need to find out who it is and why it's happening. Every night after bath time, Sarah would run to her room, put on her listening device, and try to listen to what was going on downstairs as she was falling asleep. So at this point, Sarah is obsessed. She's like, she knows for sure her parents are plotting against her. They're conspiring against her. So she's like listening, using the listening device. But a lot of the time her parents would be watching TV. And so she would pick up these extra voices in the spy kit and think that the man was there to get her. So she would shut her eyes really tight and hope to fall asleep. Anyway, one night, Sarah decided that she was going to confront her parents. She was like, she had enough of this. She had grown increasingly paranoid. She doesn't even know what paranoia is because she's very young. And she's confused. So she's like, she's just going to bite the bullet. She's going to go and talk to her parents about it because they are the only ones with the answers. Baby, both of them stared at her like she was bat-ish crazy. Okay, they were looking at her with blank stares like, what are you asking us?
Girl, no.
Why would we let anybody take you? We would never do that. It's, it must be just a really bad dream. So, of course, they reassure her like any good parents would and tell her, sometimes we have bad dreams. We have nightmares. That it is what it is. But it's just a dream. You don't have to worry about us setting you up, sending you off to be with anybody. Like, no. Though they reassured her, Sarah was still left pondering. She didn't know what and who she could trust, if her parents could be trusted. She didn't know what to believe. Because all this is going on at home and Sarah's losing quite a bit of sleep, she starts falling asleep in class and her grades start slipping. She's struggling to even keep a C, okay? She's not paying attention. She is just a mess at school. Her teacher, Mrs. Taylor, was extremely worried about her, concerned because Sarah, up until this point, had been pretty consistent and she was an A+, B+ student. So when her grades started to fall like this and she's falling asleep in class every day, the teacher obviously was like, I need to call this kid's parents because this ain't it. So the teacher, Mrs. Taylor, calls Sarah's parents and wants to have a meeting with them to discuss the slipping grades and the sleeping in class. Now, since Sarah's parents already told her, ain't no man in no cloak, she didn't know how else to explain to them why her grades are doing so poorly, why she's doing so bad in school right now. Now, after that meeting happened, the following day, Sarah went to school and decided she wanted to talk to her teacher alone. Sarah tells her teacher what's going on, why she's falling asleep, because obviously she already went to her parents and they didn't really believe her, or they denied that they're doing anything. So at this point, she's looking for somebody else to help her. Sarah tells her teacher that every night her parents are allowing a man in a cloak to come and take her out of her bedroom and bring her to a tent up the street from her house. She explains to her teacher, this is why I'm sleeping in class. I need your help. I don't know why they're letting him take me every single night, but this is why I'm not sleeping. Sarah also tells Mrs. Taylor, look, at this point, I'm not even sure what's real and what's not anymore. So I can't tell if it's a dream or if it's real, but my grades are slipping and I'm losing sleep. So obviously something is wrong. Sarah also explained to her teacher that whenever she sleeps at her friends' houses, the man in the cloak does not appear. This added an element of validity to Sarah's story. Sarah couldn't really understand why she didn't feel safe in her parents' home. Of course, Miss Taylor is extremely concerned, okay? One thing a teacher's gonna do is be nosy. So Sarah's teacher is mad concerned. She's like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this information? Like, as a teacher, if your student comes to you with certain things, obviously you're gonna try your best to help them. Since Sarah's teacher, Mrs. Taylor, had met Sarah's parents in person and they seemed quite lovely, quite normal, she was like not sure what to do with the new information that Sarah just told her. So she decides she's going to ask some of her colleagues and friends for some advice. Now, there was a nosy teacher, and we're gonna call her Miss Randall, in the teacher's lounge, eavesdropping on Mrs. Taylor's conversation with her actual teacher friends, her colleagues. Mrs. Randall decided she was going to go run and flap her gums to the principal. The only problem was, because she was eavesdropping, she didn't have the full story. So she went and ran and went to the principal and is telling the principal this, that, and the third about Sarah when she doesn't have all the information that she needs. So Mrs. Randall tells the principal, we need to get Child Protective Services involved right away, because this little girl is being abused at home. That day, right before the school bell rang, Mrs. Randall, the principal, and 2 Child Protective Services agents or social workers showed up to Mrs. Taylor's classroom and requested that Sarah stay behind when the bell rang. Mrs. Taylor, who actually has an ongoing feud with Mrs. Randall, she kind of steps in. She's like, whoa, what is this about? So Miss Randall scoffs and she's like, oh, you know exactly why we're here. Baby, it took everything out of Mrs. Taylor to not snatch Mrs. Randall up in that moment, okay? Because Mrs. Randall was definitely asking for it. So the principal tells Mrs. Taylor, look, these people from Child Protective Services are here. They want to talk to Sarah about what's going on at home. They want to help her, and I want to help her. We all want to help her. This is for her best interest. So they pretty much tell her, we just want to know what's going on at home so we can, give the best plan of action. At this point, Sarah is shook. Because if you grew up in a black home, you already know you're not supposed to go to school and tell the people there what is going on at your house. You are not supposed to have nobody showed up at your parents' door. Everybody knows this, okay? So Sarah is shook. She's like, uh-oh, what the hell did I do? That being said, both Sarah and Mrs. Taylor are extremely uncomfortable. Mrs. Taylor tries to explain, I think there's a misunderstanding here, but it doesn't go over well. People from CPS, they're like, we got it from here, ma'am. You can go. You've been dismissed. Get out of your own classroom. Like, what? Mrs. Taylor wasn't trying to go nowhere because obviously she didn't want to put Sarah in a compromising position. It's usually never good if Child Protective Services shows up at the damn school for a child. Usually never good, okay? So Mrs. Taylor is officially panicked and is doing everything in her power to stay calm because she wants to choke Mrs. Randall, as she should. So Mrs. Taylor leaves the classroom and Sarah is there with the principal and the Child Protective Service agents or the social worker. Sarah tells them, I want to call my parents. Like, she's just really uncomfortable. She's feeling lots of anxiety. She wants to call her mom and her dad. They assure her that she can call them after they're done talking. They also tell her that they've been informed that she's with them and she's talking to them and they're okay with it. This was a lie. Because Sarah already had trouble trusting her parents, she believed the social workers. That was pretty much how she started to open up and tell them what's been going on. Big freaking mistake.